David, look at me differently, please, David mumbled, sitting in an armchair in the corner watching his wife. It's not uncommon for women over 40 to have a younger lover and eventually get divorced, Colleen added, brushing aside David's sarcasm while getting ready for a date. After giving him a quick glance, Colleen went back to the mirror to put on her eyeliner. David, you refuse to leave me. Really? Would you mind explaining to me how you arrived at this decision? You know that I love you too. Even though my plans for the evening don't change the fact that you love me, it's merely an escape from our shared life. You are aware of it. You wouldn't abandon our enduring relationship over something so insignificant. It's really considerate of me. Really. David made jokes. Oh, please stop. All the women around me have partners, but not me, not even the formidable Joan Bennett. Indeed. Even with her, she is in fact in love. Colleen spoke to David's empathy for the circumstance. Of course he understands everything, she went on. What does she do? And why should he care? Everyone is aware that he had long-term romances with his assistants, even though they were contentedly married at the time. The doorbell rang, cutting them off in their chat. Oh no, I'm not quite ready. Is it possible for you to open the door? Colleen inquired. David gave her a perplexed look, but she was too preoccupied with applying makeup to notice. To be honest, I'd prefer not to do it. That you would even consider asking your husband to open the door for your lover astounds and offends me greatly. David then turned and started walking down their one-story house's corridor. He went to his office and sat in a poorly lighted room in silence. Colleen, still wearing socks, went to the front door and let Ryan in. Her evening companion was a 32-year-old attractive man. Hello, Ryan. I apologize for the wait. My husband seems to be getting into more trouble than he should, says she. Ryan merely answered, Colleen, don't worry, you're definitely worth the wait. I'll make it there as soon as I can. Once she had replied, she went to her personal office down the hall. She opened the door and her husband was sitting in an armchair, deep in meditation, lit by the light from the corridor. He's not really my boyfriend, to be honest. Until the third date, I had never referred to anyone as my boyfriend. I even got married to you. Regretfully, David uttered barely a whisper. For more than 20 years, I have committed myself to being a good wife to you. I cooked for you every night, took care of our home, and accompanied you to all the social gatherings your company demanded. I performed my duties as your wife with dignity and commitment. But for now, I think it's time to offer myself a bit more autonomy. It's not that I adore you, it's just that I want to grow beyond you. I hope that what I'm saying makes sense to you. Later, let us talk about this. As she shut the office door, Colleen said, returning to the hallway, she worked on getting ready for the date. David, meantime, sat in the darkened chamber, deep in contemplation. She visited her friend John Bennett's workplace, Starbucks on the ground floor of her office building, every morning. Windows Company was in the same room. Every day, she came here with her pals to catch up and finish all the chores related to the charity they were interested in. She did it to pass the time and garner some notoriety for her husband's prosperous company. Like many spouses, David had a successful business that more than supported them, especially in light of their decision to forego having children. During his visits, she frequently ran across Ryan, who worked on a different floor of the same building. He looked like a young David, full of vitality and youth. She didn't hold it against her spouse for not being as happy as Ryan, considering that she felt refreshed and loved being around Ryan, even though he was 13 years older. They had coffee multiple times while they were in the same location and had free time, despite not having formal dates. His flirtation with her caught her off guard, and she was even more taken aback to learn that she felt the same way. Her flirting seemed to be an indication of his desire, and he eventually proposed that they go out to dinner, when Colleen disclosed her marital status. Ryan dismissed it. He said, I'm not interested in that part of your body, your ring finger. Something inside her had been aroused by his unexpected interest, and she started to fantasize about him, seeing him in her bed instead of her husband, David. Colleen was horrified to find out that all 4 of her friends had young lovers they kept hidden after discussing her feelings with them. Despite her friends' ignorance of her genuine motivations, Colleen's last barrier was lifted after this revelation. She made it obvious that she was ready for a date with Ryan when she met him again. They'd planned the evening, and it appeared to Ryan that Colleen had worked out every marital conflict. Conversely, Colleen avoided thinking about her husband's emotions. She thought it would have no effect on their relationship, and that he loved her enough to back her choice. Ryan drove up in a classy Mercedes that evening. Despite Colleen's lack of automotive expertise, as David's wife, she was able to see the elegance and sophistication of the car. She refused to accept anything less from her partner because she was accustomed to an opulent existence. As soon as they entered the eatery, Ryan tipped the valet and she waited patiently as he led her inside. Unquestionably handsome, he brought back memories of her youthful husband. David's body had changed, as had hers, and his hair had gone gray. However, everything was a normal aspect of existence. Colleen, I'm so happy you accepted my invitation. You truly are incredible. I'm grateful. Ryan, your compliments are really flattering, I must admit. I want it known that I'm content in my marriage and that I have no intention of divorcing. I hope you realize that there won't be any intimacy during our evening together. It is strictly platonic. All I wanted was to spend time with a woman as lovely, wise, and sophisticated as you. It was a lovely evening. You can see pity at early morning coffee dates. Collins's personal limits were the only thing keeping them out of Ryan's bed. There was no doubt that she wanted to advance their relationship. They visited a local jazz club with a packed dance floor after supper. They alternated between dancing and dining at a table during the evening. Ryan carried himself with grace. While they sat at the table, he held her hand and rested his other hand on her back without ever attempting to get closer to her or bring attention to his erection. Without any warning, he placed his hand on Colleen's hip, and she did not resist. Ryan's hand moved up Colleen's bare leg, bolder as the evening went on. He eventually reached a point where Colleen placed her palm over his to stop him from going any farther, but she did not take it off. They exited the club about midnight and got into Ryan's car. Colleen wasn't shocked that he didn't start the engine immediately away. She clung to him as he put his arm around her shoulders. A kiss was very feasible, even if she'd never slept with someone on a first date. For the ensuing 10 minutes, Ryan and she both relished each other's company. She said, "I should probably go home." "When will we be able to meet up again?" Ryan queried. "I am unable to meet daily. On Sunday, perhaps? Do you enjoy ballet?" he went on. "We can purchase excellent tickets at the last minute because to my cousin's job at the theater." She smiled back. "I've never been, but I'd love to go. Although David doesn't appreciate art, it was an error for you to pick me up at home." "When should I arrive?" "The show is in the morning. Come together at 11 a.m. to eat lunch." Once they had made up their minds, they drove back to Colleen and David's home. She kissed Ryan once quickly and then got out of the car, ready to face her husband, picturing him eager to start a fight in the living room or pouting in his office chair. He may deliver a message by moving his belongings to a spare room. She was generally prepared. She was unaware, though, that he was soundly dozing in her bed. In the bathroom, she removed her makeup and thought about what to do next. His profound sleep indicates that he has come to terms with the circumstances. Shall I wait till morning, or should I wake him up to talk? She was plagued by the fear that he may depart before they had a chance to chat, and she wasn't sure what to do. David was here, at least. He woke up from his sleep and stirred. "David? How come? Do you not want to speak right away?" "All I want to do is go to bed." With a sigh, she decided to get ready for bed and took out a nightgown that matched from the wardrobe. "I still need to ask you a question. Did you share a bed with him?" David inquired. Colleen promptly said no. "It was just a date, David. You seem to be searching for an intimate companion rather than a husband this time, which is something I've never done on a first date. Thus, I reasoned that perhaps your strategy had evolved. Will you be seeing him again soon?" She hesitated before responding. "We're having lunch beforehand because we're heading to the ballet on Sunday afternoon. It ought not to impact us. We normally hang together on Sunday afternoons, which is when you met him on Friday night." She turned around to see that David had gone to bed and had probably not heard her when he remarked, "It's interesting." Returning to the closet, she completed her bedtime preparations. As her friends' husbands had been, she believed David would be more receptive to the notion. Men's performance is known to decline with age. She wished that males would be more sympathetic to women who are looking for fulfillment elsewhere. It is, after all, merely an intimate friendship. Colin was not shocked to discover David missing when she awoke the following morning. It was evident from his response the previous evening that an adjustment time was to be anticipated. She had a date with Ryan on Sunday, so she hoped he wouldn't be gone for too long. She intended to spend the entire day with him, but when morning gave way to midday, it was clear that David was keeping her at a distance on purpose. She decided to find him after thinking about the likelihood that he had gone to the office on Saturday in order to avoid her. It was her assumption that he would not pick up calls on his workplace or cell phones. Upon reaching the parking lot, she discovered David's vehicle in its customary spot. She recognized the guards after checking in at the security desk and rode the elevator to the 7th floor. As she had done many times before, she went to David's office. "Oscar has let you know that you're coming, Colin." "Why have you come here?" David inquired. "All I want is to be with my hubby." "Really? Is your partner occupied right now?" "David, please get over your immaturity. I've always had other significant people in my life except you. During the week, I regularly visit my pals. It wouldn't be comparable if you didn't make love to them." "David, I'm sorry this is causing you any trouble. I have been making an effort to reassure you that neither their marriage nor my love for you would be impacted by my connections with other people. I truly want to live out the rest of my days with you because I adore you so much. Why then are you behaving in this way? I'm struggling because of Kathleen, a method to express your affection for me. It seems selfish to me. David, I feel the same way about you. Generally speaking, my friendship with other women is just as vital to our marriage as my relationship with him. I therefore fail to see why you are so irate. You can't even bring up his name-calling? I'm making an effort to stop upsetting you. I think it would be less damaging if his identity was hidden." "I recognize. Although you met with them last night and made plans to meet again tomorrow, I can't recall the last time you attended a meeting with coworkers. He appears to be more significant than they are. This is the only way to really get to know him, as I mentioned last night. You know, when it comes to physical intimacy, I've never been hurried, even while attending college." David cut the line. "We will now discuss the physical side. You are free to insist on it. I will spend this time separate from our regular time together, and I will do it covertly, so that you won't notice what happens." "Fantastic. You intend to be a discreet woman, correct?" The slur made Kathleen grimace, but she chose not to argue. She didn't want to stir up controversy, and he appeared content with the way things were. "I had hoped we would have the entire day to ourselves. I'll be in the office all day on Saturday to gather the data because, as I mentioned last week, the quarterly reports are due the following week. As usual, I was hoping we might hang out on Friday night and Sunday, but it appears like you don't think much of me." "David, I apologize. Most likely as a result of all that is happening. I overlooked our plans. Everything is okay. I still have work to focus on, but I think it's significant. Tonight, let's visit the coast. When I've completed my assignment, I'll reserve a room for us at the Deo and we'll spend the day there. That's where. The payment for the ballet tickets has already been made. I was invited earlier. I'll feel bad if I say no. Right now, it's all right. Kathleen, I wasn't expecting you to concur. You chose them over me, I know that. You are now free to leave." She was aware that he would stop listening to her. She sighed heavily as she left his office, frustrated that her expectations had not been met. She thought that David would be disappointed at first, but eventually he would accept her happiness and understand her need to stay with him forever. She had only been dating Ryan for a short while when she decided to concentrate on getting to know him better. She planned to go on more dates in a venue more private than a cafe, and she had previously told Ryan about this. She thought that 5 dates would be sufficient to determine whether she was ready to move on from their relationship, but she would only go on them during the day or on times when David would be unavailable. She was caught between wanting to take advantage of this chance and not wanting her marriage to suffer as a result, just as he usually did on Saturdays before to the quarterly reports. David arrived back at his house closer to midnight. Colleen questioned how he would manage the planned trip and data collecting, but then he decided he was not going to undertake it. He acknowledged that she would go with Ryan and that their plans would be unfairly canceled due to an impromptu thought. After days like these, Colleen hoped that David would be feeling romantic today. He frequently relished intimate moments in silence. Once he got back home, He claimed that it gave him a sense of relaxation and helped him recall his goals. Because of her intense affection for him, Colleen always looked forward to when he made love to her. She had started to feel fatigued, but as she heard the garage door open, her spirits lifted. She laid beneath the blanket, baring her shoulders, waiting for her husband to come into the bedroom. "How are you, my love?" she inquired. He replied as usual, going into the bedroom to undress, but he abruptly went to the bathroom when it came time to take off all of his clothes. As soon as Colleen heard the shower turned on, her expectations were dashed because David showed up wearing his go-to shorts. Colleen saw this as an opportunity to defy the plan and express my love to herself. "Maybe tonight we can get back together." "Is there a chance your lover won't worry?" stated David. "These comments won't help, David. Is it not possible for us to spend time together as a married couple tonight, both as a lady and a man?" David looked visibly torn, as they were lovers without regard for anyone else. He was still very much in love with her in spite of her choices, and she never ceased worrying about him. He thought it was fair to say that she wasn't yet in a committed relationship with this other man. He couldn't help but think that she would remain loyal to herself because he remembered how they shared a kiss after their first date. He was aware that the only thing he could do was try his hardest to talk her out of doing it. Ultimately, Ryan intends to stop their physical relationship as soon as she crosses the line and makes love to him. Seeing him immediately remove his shorts, his wife smiled appreciatively. For the next 2 hours, Colleen utilized her beautiful physique to win her husband over, and she was happy that he felt the same way. While working toward her own happiness with Ryan, she hoped that her husband would see that she could completely please him. Meanwhile, he thought she would be content enough to forego her intentions to pursue a romantic relationship. David attempted to stop her the following morning in the hopes that she wouldn't want to go meet her lover. He kissed her, held her, and lavished her with caresses to indicate how much he loved her. Gradually, he felt her anxiety and saw that his scheme was beginning to come together. He gave himself permission to feel a flicker of hope. 10 minutes later, Colleen slipped out of his hug. "David, I apologize. I have packing to do." She expressed regret. He had failed in his endeavor to win her over once more. She sided with her boyfriend over him once more. "Naturally," he answered. In an attempt to maintain his modesty, sat down and hastily put on his shorts. It was especially unpleasant to him that his wife, who had witnessed him in the nude several times, was getting ready to meet her lover while he was making it without bothering to look at her. He stepped out of the bedroom. As Colleen saw her husband go, she experienced a brief moment of despair. She cherished their morning embraces and tried to spend as much time as possible in bed. She reluctantly got up to shower and get ready for her meeting with Ryan. Going to him with a scent of her husband's intimacy was out of the question. It would be impolite and inconsiderate. In the future, she also plans to go back to her husband after having intimacy with Ryan. As the water flowed down her face, she considered the situation and tried to think of a solution to make David feel better. Her only alternative was to give up on the notion of having a boyfriend entirely, but that was not an option. She desired to think about it. She donned a modest yet alluring ensemble that included matching undergarments, garters, and stockings. She felt attractive and secure in her underwear, even though she wasn't intending to expose it to Ryan. She was rushing to get ready to depart because time was running short. In an attempt to say farewell and reassure David of her devotion, she called him. However, there was stillness when she called him. She looked around his office, but he wasn't there. She didn't know he had left without saying anything until she walked into the garage and noticed that their cherished 1968 Mustang convertible was gone. She inhaled deeply, closed up the home, and went to the restaurant. She didn't notice the ordinary vehicle following her from the neighborhood because her mind was fixed on meeting Ryan. Ryan was already outside when she pulled up, and she apologized for being a few minutes late. They hurriedly sat down at the table after giving her a quick peck on the cheek and reassuring her that everything would be okay. In the companionship of this handsome and fascinating young man. Her mind was cleared of all thoughts of David. As usual with Ryan, the lunch talk flowed easily, and she found herself thoroughly enjoying it. Since they had never had lunch here before, she couldn't help but think about her husband and whether it wouldn't be suitable to bring him here in the future. The food was great. The ballet was breathtaking, and Ryan's broad artistic expertise astounded her. In a gentle manner, he described the storyline by pointing out the symbolic significance of each action. She couldn't help but wonder what kinds of experiences she had missed out on because David was so different from him. This was not intended as a jab at David, as nobody can have an interest in everything. However, she saw how beautifully David and Ryan complemented one another. If she could somehow incorporate David in this, she felt that whatever new passion she wanted to pursue would probably find a reaction from one of them. There might be more to her relationship with Ryan than just a physical one. They took a little stroll to the neighboring hills after seeing the ballet. The path took them to a tiny observation platform with an amazing view over the city. Colleen couldn't help but wonder if Ryan had brought any other women with him to this place. Knowing his past, though, spared her from personal offense. She realized that he had chosen to bring her here for a reason. "Colleen, you are an amazing woman." Ryan remarked, "I'm fortunate to have you here with me." "Ryan, I think we're both lucky," Colleen smiled back. And with that, their intense kiss started. She was drawn to the strong young man, and her strong desire for him overcame her feelings, making her doubt if she could resist until their 5th date. As they realized that going all the way would probably be the next step, their kisses grew more intense. Reluctantly, she moved away from him again. It was clear that Ryan was disappointed. "Ryan, I apologize. This is something I really want. However, as I've previously stated, I have boundaries that I must honor. Colleen, I get what you're saying. I recognize that you want to be at ease before moving forward. You've also already indicated a few days for our meeting. It suddenly occurred to me that every coffee date we have should have some purpose in terms of getting to know one another. Maybe I acted too hastily in this situation. Maybe this is the motivation she needs to move her plans along more quickly. When is lunch possible for you?" He pondered his questions as he asked. "On Tuesdays, it ought to function, but not on Mondays. I'll get time to tidy up before heading back home. Please make appropriate plans for everything. I'll stop by Starbucks tomorrow morning to go over the specifics and bring the required materials." Ryan went back to retrieve Colin's car from the restaurant parking lot. She got home at about 6:30 p.m. and went inside a deserted house. Checking her phone for a message from David, she was overjoyed. When she couldn't find one, she rushed into the bedroom and waited for the garage door to open. As soon as she heard the sound of the garage door opening, signaling David's arrival, she quickly changed into an evening dress and headed to the kitchen to start cooking dinner. Due to David's unpredictable schedule, she had learned how to cook delicious meals in no time, and she started to get the ingredients out of the fridge. David appeared from the garage. "Hello, dear. How was your day?" she asked, bending down to kiss him. He turned away, avoiding her lips, clearly still upset that she had left their bed earlier that morning to meet Ryan. Despite his short sentences, she found comfort in the fact that he was still talking to her. She had hoped that making love the night before would bring them closer together, but it seemed that leaving his bed had nullified all remnants of goodwill. She noticed that he didn't ask. "Our dinner will be ready in about 20 minutes, she informed him. "Fantastic. I'll be in the office," he replied. Colleen quickly cooked a teriyaki roast with rice and invited David to dinner. He washed his hands before joining her at the table. She tried to make small talk. "So where did you write today?" she inquired. He replied without emotion. "Nowhere in particular. I just got on the highway and drove. Did you make any stops along the way?" "I stopped for lunch in a small shop near the highway and took a few breaks to stretch my legs. That's all." Colleen tried to turn the conversation to her day, but David abruptly interrupted her. "I don't care about your date, Colleen. I didn't try to. No more discussing about this topic." David jumped up abruptly, dumping his half-eaten meal without uttering a word. He proceeded down the corridor and disappeared inside his office. Colleen sat in silence for a few minutes before deciding to clean the table. She couldn't help but think that it was a mistake. She packaged the leftovers so David could take them to work with him. If you wish to do, he always liked the way she cooked in the evening. She cleaned up the house, expecting that David would finally leave his office and they could spend time together. She attempted to save a poor evening by simply expressing her passion of ballet with him and hoping that it could interest him in the future. Ryan shouldn't have cared, but David couldn't seem to separate the two themes. Disappointed, she withdrew to the bedroom, got ready for bed, and lay down with the book, still hopeful that David would join her towards midnight. It became evident that David was avoiding her and waiting for her to fall asleep in order to go to bed. Reluctantly, Colleen closed her book and turned off the light, losing interest in reading. She crawled back between the covers, wondering if her interpretation of her husband's behavior was influenced by her unconscious guilt. She quickly threw this idea out of her head and knew in her heart and head that she still loved her husband and that she had done nothing wrong. Regardless of the issue, it was undoubtedly not that she couldn't get rid of the sense that David was purposefully avoiding her. She closed her eyes, choosing not to exacerbate the issue, and drifted off to sleep with ease. When she awoke the following morning to an empty bed, she discovered David had already departed for work. She was uncertain if he had actually gone to bed the previous evening. She tried to reassure him that their marriage was solid, but she started to become disturbed at his actions. He carried on acting dissatisfied and allowing these feelings to rule him. She made up her mind that enough was enough. She could stand his behavior no more. Colleen made the decision to stay in Ryan's company and to play the part of David's loving wife, but she was no longer going to urge him to do so. She went about her day as usual, got dressed as normal, and went to Starbucks with pals. Their eyes met as soon as she noticed Ryan seated in the corner. She went to purchase coffee and sat down at the table with him. They refrained from making public shows of affection. Ryan said, "I couldn't stop thinking about you last night." "Ryan, me too," she answered. He handed her a short letter and murmured, "I can't wait for tomorrow." The specifics for tomorrow are as follows. I figured that my flat, which is just a short walk away, would be preferable to a motel. We have greater privacy and there's no chance that someone will discover that we're checking in. I appreciate your caution, Ryan. I don't want to add to the suffering my spouse is already going through. Naturally, he answered. Before Ryan had to head out for work, they continued to talk. She kept her plans with Ryan a secret, even though she was aware that all of her friends had young companions. She planned to keep everything a secret out of fear that she would get into trouble with David if he found out. She was delighted when David came to eat with her that evening and gave her a warm greeting. They had a pleasant talk without bringing up her boyfriend. Colleen was relieved and hopeful that David was starting to understand that her friendship with Ryan would not have an impact on their union. She didn't think his behavior was meant to stop her from dating someone else, despite the fact that it was accurate. When she got to Ryan's place the following day, she was welcomed with open arms. Ryan dragged her inside and showered her with kisses without any delay. The door closed behind them and they were in a passionate embrace, moving quickly to pursue each other. They decided there was no need for foreplay because they were both excited to be together at last. Colleen was lying on her back a few minutes after she'd stepped through his door. For the first time in 25 years, she was making love to a man who wasn't her husband. She begged to be given more, as though everything had been one big, drawn-out climax. Enjoying the moment, they leaned back in Ryan's bed and in each other's arms. Was it truly amazing? Did I do better than your spouse? He inquired. Colleen straightened up and looked at Ryan. We're not talking about my husband, she stated emphatically. I'm not here because I'm not happy with him. He's a terrific partner. I'll depart and this will be our final encounter if you try to make it into a competition. Are you following? Ryan reassured her right away. Naturally, it was not intended in any way. All I want to do is make sure you're content. Colleen eased herself back into his embrace. According to her, it was amazing. I'm having a great time with you, and I hope we get to spend more time together. They made love more tenderly and lovingly than they had during their first intense rendezvous for over 2 hours. Ryan's skill to make her feel good and his willingness to follow her lead in bed thrilled Colleen. Even though Ryan and David shared certain similarities, Colleen liked something about Ryan's individuality. Ryan, on the other hand, was drawn to older, more experienced women, therefore he thought Colleen's graceful body was beautiful. He pictured them being in a committed and long-lasting relationship in the future. Both she and her husband had no intention of divorcing or getting married. He had previously attempted cohabitation with his girlfriends, but it had never worked out. He didn't like having people around all the time, and he preferred his own space. Now that they had spent over 3 hours together, he decided that a married adult would be the best choice. Colleen entered the bathroom. To freshen up, she brought feminine hygiene supplies, shampoo, and soap. Colleen left her personal items at Ryan's place so that she would have them available in case something happened. They said goodbye after their final kiss, with Colleen heading home and Ryan heading to work while she waited for her husband to get back. Colleen made an effort to clean herself up, making sure everything looked flawless by checking her reflection multiple times. If David was uninformed of her meeting with Ryan, it would be easier to prevent potential difficulties. Colleen greeted David cordially as he walked in at 7:13 p.m. She hugged and kissed him on the cheek, but she observed a dramatic shift in his conduct. David's arms sank to his sides and his body appeared tight. He pulled back in. Colleen's face showed a troubled expression. "Colleen, did you sleep with him today?" he asked. "What? David, I don't understand. Why do you think you're a creature of habit?" "Colleen, I understand your behaviors better than anyone else. When you were more active, taking an afternoon shower was normal. However, in recent years, this has not occurred, unless there was a specific reason, until today." "I hadn't noticed your soap and shampoo smelling so strong at this time of day in years," David replied. "Given everything, the only plausible answer is that you recently took a shower with the goal of washing away or concealing what happened after being with him. However, it is still preferable to the alternative. I admire your efforts. All you've accomplished is disclosing what you were trying to conceal." He moved by her and into the office. She cursed beneath her breath. She was certain that her scheme had failed. She underestimated the fragrance that identified her. She hoped to keep her acts hidden from David, just informing him she would be busy at some point. But now she had to reconsider her strategy. Sighing, she pulled herself together and began making dinner. Dinner was basic. She prepared boiled chicken breast with vegetables and linguine pasta. She cautiously made her way to the office after setting the table and arranging the food. "David? Dinner is ready," she called. "I am not hungry," he said. "Darling, you should eat," she insisted. "I am fine, thank you," he said. "David, please, you need to take care of yourself. I doubt you have eaten anything healthy all day," she urged. I attempted to be kind in this manner, but I realized that nothing will work. "Colleen, I do not want to eat what you cooked. I will find something for myself later." He waved her off. She left the room, feeling as if she wasn't hungry either. Colleen carefully placed the food in the refrigerator, thinking that if David didn't need it, she'd give it to one of Joan's colleagues. Colleen, despite her wealth, could not accept the concept of food waste because she grew up in a family where food was scarce. Colleen spent the evening thinking about how she could see Ryan without David knowing. It was critical for her to keep things private, regardless of whether he knew about their romance. He shouldn't know the exact hour of their encounters. Surprisingly, she didn't consider not doing it at all. She went to bed alone and fell asleep more quickly than expected. She ascribed it to the satisfaction she had with Ryan earlier that day. Even the thought of David finding out didn't stop her from falling asleep. When she awoke at 4 in the morning, she discovered that David had vanished from their bed. She wasn't startled by his absence, but she was shocked to see him asleep with his head on the table. She gently awoke him and called out, "David!" "David, honey, I realize how upset you are, but sleeping like this is not good for you. Go to bed, or if you prefer, go to the spare room. Sleeping in this position is unhealthy for the back. I know you're upset at me, but I still love you, and I want to care for you. Please." David awoke, wiping spit from his hands and mouth. He felt disoriented, as he always did when he woke up, and couldn't tell if the previous events were real or a nightmare. So he agreed to be led to their bedroom down the hall. When she began to undress him, he suddenly realized that everything was real. He saw her actions as an attempt to seduce him and immediately began resisting. "Stop, Colleen, stop," he begged David. "I am just trying to get you ready for bed," she explained calmly, but he did not want her to do that. "Please stop. Only a few more buttons," she insisted, disappointed. He pushed her away. "Damn you, Colleen, get your dirty hands off of me," he snapped. Colleen recoiled, shocked by his harsh words. David had raised his voice before, but she could count on her fingers how many times he had done so in the previous 25 years. Sitting at the table, she tried unsuccessfully to hold back tears. "I was simply trying to undress you so you could go to bed." "I didn't try anything else," she explained. He responded, "I know, I just didn't like that you were touching me with hands that had been on another man's body less than a day before. It's correct. I believe I understand this. Although not entirely, I've showered and washed my hands several times since then, but I know it's more about your mindset. I apologize, David. I'm leaving you, Colleen said. Then I went into another room to give David enough time to get into bed. Regardless of his initial reaction, she was confident that David would eventually accept the situation, even if everything was falling apart. She never considered breaking up with Ryan. On the contrary, she saw it as a test of her determination and perseverance, vowing never to give up. She checked on David, who was already asleep, then returned to her bed and promptly fell asleep. The next day, Wednesday, David informed her by text message that he would be late at work, showing at least some attention even without the usual phone call. She realized that she would not be able to do much to support him in this difficult moment. She had done everything she could to prepare for their next conversation. She knew exactly what to say. The anticipation of meeting Ryan on Thursday morning was nagging at her. The day before, they had agreed to meet at Starbucks to make a schedule of meetings. One days were unavailable due to Ryan's busy schedule, and Colleen decided to avoid Fridays and weekends to respect the time she spent with David. They decided to meet at Ryan's apartment on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Not wanting to meet too often or too close together, the meeting with her friends seemed to last forever. And as soon as it was over, she practically ran out of the building. She had to consciously fight the urge to exceed the speed limit so that she wouldn't be stopped. She had heard that forbidden intimacy was the most exciting but couldn't understand what attracted her so much, the excitement of a new partner after so many years. She entered Ryan's apartment, the door of which, as promised, was unlocked. Ryan was already lying on the bed, and as before, they didn't need any foreplay. They quickly began another passionate session, which lasted about 3 hours. Fortunately, Ryan's flexible schedule allowed them to spend time together. She couldn't deny that Ryan seemed to be a better lover than David, although she would never admit it. This was not surprising, considering that David was a loyal and devoted husband who did everything possible to make her happy in bed. On the contrary, Ryan had been with many women and had acquired various skills that he brought to bed with Colleen. In the end, it was time to leave and return home. After checking her phone, she found Mill messages and decided that David would be home at his usual time as she dressed and got behind the wheel. She thought about what she would say to him that evening. After taking a shower and washing thoroughly, she realized that this might give her away, but she had a plan for that. Wearing her usual leisure clothes, she sat and waited for David to come home. He walked in the door shortly before 7 in the evening, and she greeted him with, "Good evening, dear David. Are you going to eat my cooking today? Or should I just worry about myself? I'm fine." "I had a snack on the way home." He replied, "You shouldn't eat fast food. It's not healthy, I know. I'll be in the office," he said and left. "David, when you have a minute, I'd like to discuss something with you," she said to him. Okay, he replied, and disappeared into his office at the end of the corridor while Colleen was concentrating on preparing for the fundraiser. She noticed that David didn't seem to want to start the conversation. She wanted so much. Eventually, she closed her laptop and entered his office. "David, can we talk now?" she asked. He reluctantly replied, "Maybe." Colleen sat down in a chair and said, "Darling, I want you to know that I love you deeply. My new connection does not influence my attitude towards our marriage. I accept your point of view, even if it may not coincide with mine. This is what I consider necessary for myself and what I desire. I was hoping for more openness and understanding on your part, but unfortunately this did not happen. David, I want to say that I'm willing to be patient and give you the time you need to get through this. I will continue to be present every evening and weekend. I hope that we can still spend time together and be close as we always have been. But if you chose to ignore me throughout this time, I'll have to put up with it. But I'll still be here hoping that we can get through this." "So you expect to continue dating Ryan?" "Yes. And you think it would be difficult for me to find out his name? Colleen?" "No. I guess I just figured that you wouldn't want to know him. Also, David, I want to apologize for that event on Tuesday when it became evident during the afternoon shower that I was having an affair with Ryan. I don't want you to know when I'm meeting him, so I'll start taking a shower after lunch on weekdays. I guarantee you we don't see each other very often. But this way I'll always be in the same state. When you come home from work every day, I appreciate that this may not be a perfect alternative, but it is the best one I can provide at the moment. So, Colleen, is this your final decision on this matter? Is there anything I can say or do to convince you to stop your connection with Ryan? I apologize, David, but no. Well, I appreciate your candor. However, that is not what I expected from the heir. I guess I'll have to figure out how to handle it. Is that everything you wanted to tell me? I just want you to know that I adore you. I sincerely adore you. I hope you understand that my love for you is not based on Ryan's bodily requirements. David grinned wryly and nodded sadly. Colleen waited a few moments to see if her husband wanted to say anything else before softly leaving the office and carefully closing the door behind her. She was worried about the conversation, but also pleased of herself for managing it well. She was confident that David would appreciate her point of view once he knew how important it was to her and how little it affected the relationship. Colleen kept her promise and stayed at home on Friday evening and throughout the weekend, leaving only to perform a few quick errands that took less than an hour. She requested her husband to accompany her, hoping to reassure him that her motives were benign. But he declined. There was very little communication between them. David did not express hostility, nor did he demonstrate love or affection. Colleen knew that David was still adjusting to his new lifestyle, and she was willing to give him time. Despite David's lack of response to her attempts at intimacy on Saturday night, Colleen maintained hope and was convinced that all would improve over time. She understood the major cause for his behavior, yet she was not discouraged. She believed that, despite the challenges ahead, David would finally recognize that things would improve. David went early on Monday morning, and Colleen suspected that such a routine would continue for some time. Despite the inconvenience of having to take a shower in the middle of the day to soothe David's emotions, she was certain that everything would soon return to normal. After meeting with her pals, she listened to how they spent the weekend with their spouses and shared their stories. Colleen remembered the time she spent with Ryan. The memories triggered her emotions, causing her heart to race and her body to warm up. "Are you okay, Colleen? Your face is a touch flushed." "I am fine. I'm just a little overheated," Colleen said, sipping water to cool down. She attempted to concentrate on the story she was delivering, but Ryan's presence kept creeping into her mind. Afraid of betraying her sentiments, she pushed them aside and successfully occupied herself with other ideas. After a week, we spend Monday night with David. Colleen began preparing for the appointment with Ryan on Tuesday. Ryan welcomed her in a bathrobe, which he quickly removed and eagerly hugged her without hesitation or warning. He took charge, and she succumbed to the intense pleasure of the moment. After a romantic date, they relaxed in each other's arms. "I realize that your spouse is furious, Colleen, but I have to ask how things are at home. Do you feel safe?" Ryan asked. "Thank you for your concern, Ryan, but David poses no threat." Colleen told him that it is tough for him to adjust to the new circumstances, which makes us feel distant and cold. "He seems to be avoiding me, despite his denials." "Are you still in contact?" "This could be a good indicator. I show my love and support for him and strive to be there with him. It will take him some time to realize that you do not pose a threat to our marriage." They made love for another hour before Colleen left. After cleaning herself up and having a shower, she curled up with a book and waited for David to return home or send a message. At 7:36 p.m., he entered. "Hello, sweetie. How do things work?" she greeted him. "It's okay," he said. "Would you like to have supper tonight?" she asked. "I ate a late lunch." "It's okay," he said. "Is there anything you wish to discuss?" she asked. "No, I'll be in the office," he added before disappearing inside the room. "Okay, I'll be there if and when you need me." When the door quietly closed, she made playful remarks. Colleen found herself alone in the living room again. She reflected on how David appeared to divide his time between working and avoiding her in the office, but decided to give him free rein as planned. She returned to her book. She was convinced that she had made the proper decision. Colleen continued to date Ryan on Tuesdays and Thursdays for the next few weeks, and she had passionate intimacy with him. Her evenings and weekends with David stayed the same. They maintained a respectful relationship and communicated as required. Colleen often invited David to dinner, but he always had a reason to decline. Every evening, David went to his office. leaving Colleen to read, conduct charity work, watch television, or browse the internet. Despite her feelings of loneliness, Colleen remained hopeful that she may have a loving and present husband, as well as a passionate and attentive lover. This faith enabled her to face the loneliness with courage. This continued for 3 months before Colleen observed a shift in her husband's conduct. Although his daily routine remained unchanged, he began to return home with a more upbeat attitude, even if he arrived later than normal. They started eating supper together many times a week and occasionally enjoyed each other's company by watching interesting TV series or simply sitting and reading together. Although their romantic relationship did not resume, Colleen was confident that changes in her husband's behavior signaled a shift in his outlook. She felt it was only a matter of time before physical closeness returned. However, 3 more months passed with little progress, and they were no closer to renewing their relationship. Their relationship appeared to have hit a stalemate, and they appeared more like neighbors or friends than a couple on the verge of going on. Colleen was pleased with her improvement, but she couldn't wait to see how their relationship progressed. Despite her incredible closeness to Ryan, she had no affections for him and wished for the intimate connection she had with David. Ryan's bond with David was purely physical. It was love, and she desperately missed it. That evening, she decided to be frank about it with David. "David, I'd like you to know how much I appreciate your understanding of my connection with Ryan." "I understand it wasn't easy for you," she began. "Well, Colleen, you gave me no option." David responded, "I know, and I'm sorry things turned out this way, but I'm still concerned about our lack of intimacy or any kind of intimate life." She admitted it had been a long time since we had made love, after I began dating Ryan. "I miss our intimacy. I'm pleased with what's going on, but I can't help but wonder when we can move on." "I didn't say it directly, Colleen, but I don't intend to make love to you, David. This is ludicrous. I always try to be really clean for you. We have no reason not to stay close. I see your point of view, but I don't agree. You made a decision that I disagreed with. Do not forget about it. I also have the right to make a choice and impose it on you." David got up and went to bed. Colleen was taken aback by this unexpected assertion of power. She believed that her affair with Ryan would spark David's interest and inspire him to battle for her favor. She hadn't started seeing Ryan to make David jealous, but she saw it as a potential benefit to their relationship. Colleen had never anticipated that she would not be intimate with David while dating someone else. He couldn't keep resisting forever. She felt confident in her strategy and expected everything to fall into place. Colleen decided to gently put more pressure on David. Until now, she had given him time to consider his options, but she now felt he needed a little push. She held back, anticipating that he would ultimately want to have another personal relationship with her. She adjusted her strategy after hearing his promise to give up his affections while Ryan was around. She decided to escalate the flirtation. She'd become more physically beautiful, clinging to him with her entire body. She wore revealing clothes to bed, or perhaps she wore nothing at all. Despite having never slept naked before, she was eager to change that. Her purpose was to make it nearly difficult for him to resist her, knowing that if he gave in, he would no longer be able to refuse her. This approach appeared perfect, but in the end, nothing worked. Colleen tried everything she could to persuade her husband to try during the next 2 months, but he was uninterested. He stayed disconnected once she abandoned this aspect of her strategy. It had been 8 months since their previous personal encounter. Nonetheless, Ryan satisfied her bodily needs. She longed for an emotional connection. Making love with David supplied. Colleen became extremely frustrated and disappointed after being in this status for another month. She eventually resolved to accept whatever David was willing to offer. If he didn't want a physical relationship due of her friendship with Ryan, that's fine. If he chose a sexless relationship, she would agree. She determined to express her love for him in many ways and accept whatever attention he was prepared to provide. This unfortunate decision marked the start of their final voyage together. On a balmy Wednesday morning, Colleen Parker drove her Lexus outside her husband's office building. She grabbed her purse, checked in at the security desk, and then headed up to the 7th floor. It had been a long time since she had visited the workplace during the day, and she hadn't realized how packed it was. Terry, David's loyal secretary, noticed her the moment she stepped out of the elevator. "Mrs. Lynch, it's wonderful to have you back. It's been a while since your previous visit." Terry greeted her kindly. "Hello, Terry. I'm pleased to see you too. Is David at his office? Is she already on her way to his office?" "Yes, he is in his office. Could you please wait a minute?" Terry asked. "They are working with classified information this morning, therefore I have been instructed to notify everyone that comes." Terry picked up the phone and dialed David's number. "Mr. Lynch, your wife is here to see you." She stated that Colleen couldn't make out David's response, but she could hear his voice on the other end of the telephone. Following a brief talk, Terry informed Colleen, "It will just take a few minutes. Mrs. Lynch, you need to certify some documents." Colleen nodded in agreement and used the chance to glance around the office while waiting. She recognized a few familiar faces as well as several newcomers. She couldn't help but note how vacant Eileen's desk was. Colleen assumed that Eileen, David's loyal personal assistant for many years, was in his office with him. A moment later, the door opened, revealing a lovely woman standing on the threshold. She was shorter than Colleen, with full dark brown hair and an elegant body that strained against the buttons of her shirt. Colleen estimated her age to be between 20 and 30 years old. Colleen instantly disliked her. "Mrs. Lynch. It's good to finally meet you. My name is Alana." She greeted with a smile and led the way. Alana asked Colleen to follow her inside David's office. Colleen followed behind her, feeling awkward and out of place. She was aware that she had previously walked this journey with Eileen, but the circumstances had changed. Eileen, who was older and married, engaged in nice chat during their walks. However, with Alana, it seemed odd and unpleasant. When they got to David's office, Alana waited in the doorway as Colleen approached, sensing the tension in the air. "Thank you, Alana. You can now take a break for lunch. We'll continue at 2 o'clock, David said. "Yes, sir," Alana responded fiercely, exiting the office and closing the door behind her. How does she even walk in those shoes without falling? Colleen wondered. "I hope you didn't come here to make snide remarks about my assistant," David said. "Your assistant? What about Eileen?" she asked. "Was she promoted?" "She is presently the executive assistant to the owner and CEO," David explained. The task became too much for her, especially because she had recently turned 60 and wanted to rest. "I decided to create a new role for her that required less responsibility and no business trips. Will she join you on your vacations now?" Colleen commented, "It's funny and ironic to see you jealous given the circumstances." "Why are you here, Colleen?" "To eat lunch with my hubby." David asked, "I see. I don't see why you chose Wednesday over the other days. It has been almost a year since your previous visit here, throughout the week. Why are you here today?" He said, "Because I miss my husband. I want to spend time with him. I love you, whether you believe or not. And I just wanted to see you," Colleen responded. "All right." Colleen. On the next street, a new Vietnamese restaurant has opened, and it is delicious. "Let's eat lunch there," David suggested. They walked silently, making occasional comments about passing objects. Colleen wrapped her arm around David, but he did not appear to mind. They were quickly settled in. The hostess addressed David by name, leading Colleen to believe he was a regular visitor. They had a casual conversation, and David suggested a few dishes before they ordered lunch. Colleen reached out to take David's hand. "I'm glad he didn't pull away." "Do you believe I love you, David?" she asked. "Love? What kind of fantasy world are you living in? How can you love me after everything you've done?" David responded, "I have to admit you chose a pretty decent guy." Colleen replied, "What do you mean? What do you know about Ryan?" she asked. "Actually, I know a lot. I've done my research," David admitted. "I checked him out. That is how I learned so much about him, including your regular visits to his apartment on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I've also noticed that you conveniently meet with me on Wednesdays to talk. But, as I previously stated, he is neither a crook nor a gold digger. You could ignore this, but I'd rather be aware of it." David continued, "I own a very successful company and we make a lot of money. Perhaps you are simply looking for an opportunity to meet him. I apologize for bringing up personal issues. I had to consider the possibility that his motives are not entirely noble, especially given that he is involved with a married woman." but it appears he is only interested in physical relationships and has no plans to blackmail us. I doubt he is capable of such a thing. David, let us change the subject. I came here to meet with you and talk about our relationship, Colleen redirected. What is the relationship? Colleen, we appear more like neighbors and friends than a married couple. We haven't had intimacy in nearly a year, Colleen added. David, the decision is yours. He smiled and responded, Yes, this is my decision, isn't it? Why did you decide to cheat on me? Colleen, we don't make love in the short time we spend together. It is limited to watching television or remaining in the same room. That is why I am here today. I am dissatisfied with the current situation, and I want to change something. I'd like to clarify that I don't intend to stop communicating with Ryan, but I do want to make the most of our time together. It appears that this is where the misunderstanding lies. Colleen, as long as you're dating Ryan, I think that's the best you can hope for. I disagree, David. I believe our marriage can be stronger than ever. Spending time with Ryan does not keep me from spending time with you. I do not have romantic feelings for him, so my emotions aren't divided. Simply put, I don't see the time I spend with Ryan in the same light as I do with my friends. It is more than just another interest. It is completely different. I don't mind if you spend time with your friends. No one's life should revolve around just one person, but I can't continue our marriage as if nothing is going on while you're with another man. Your claim that everything stays the same is absurd. We used to have 2 people in our marriage. Currently, there are 3, so no, it is not the same as before. And things will never be the same as before. It's disgusting that you deny your love for him. You see him as merely a tool for intimacy. Do you treat your lover as a toy for your pleasure? David's rage grew throughout his tirade, despite Colin's futile attempts to calm them. In the end, he threw $50 on the table and left. Colleen hurriedly packed her belongings, muttered an apology to the nearby customers, who gave her disapproving looks, and exited the restaurant quickly. She looked toward David's office and noticed his upbeat demeanor in the distance. Knowing she wouldn't be able to catch up to him, she decided to take her time and return to her car. She struggled to keep her emotions under control until she reached the safety of her car. She couldn't hold back her tears once she closed the door. She couldn't understand how her relationship with Ryan was affecting her marriage, especially since Joan and other women in her circle had lovers but were happily married. She didn't understand why it was so difficult for her. Perhaps she should inform her friends about it. She dismissed the thought, not wanting them to think she had ruined what they were doing so well after work. She returned home and took her usual afternoon shower. She didn't want David to think she had turned to Ryan for comfort following their fight. So she kept to her usual routine. She hoped to have a more polite conversation with her husband once he calmed down, so she took the time to tidy herself up. The truth was, they couldn't continue to ignore the current situation. David arrived home late. I warned Colleen ahead of time, around 9 p.m. While waiting for him, she busied herself with dinner and light cleaning. David, can we speak? She asked. I don't know what else to say. Colleen. He replied, You started an affair despite my objections, and it went on for almost a year. It seems you think the problem lies in my disagreement with this, not in the fact that you were involved in it. We won't come to an agreement. So why prolong this conversation? Yes, I understand all your points, but I still believe we have the ability to become something better than we are now. We've been in a relationship for 25 years. Certainly we can aspire for more than our current position. Our current circumstance is the result of your betrayal. Colleen. It doesn't make sense, David countered. Joan Allen, Gail, and Marge live in wonderful, loving marriages and have companions on the side with whom they spend time when their spouses are unavailable. I don't understand why we can't achieve the same, Colleen pressed. David grinned quietly and encouraged his wife to sit down. You know, when it all started, I was talking to their husbands. Well, except for Wendell. His travels are widely documented, and everyone knows he was unfaithful to Joan long before she would have done the same. But I chatted to the others. What is this about? I had thought you would leave this in the past. I allowed you to go on dates and even dated Ryan a few times during the day. However, after the second encounter, you made it apparent that you intended to continue seeing him in the future. Not knowing what to do, I sought counsel from experienced husbands to learn how they deal with similar situations. They gave me some helpful advice, which I have been following ever since. Oh, David, you're very attentive. Colleen was taken aback by this finding, as she had not noticed any efforts on David's behalf to strengthen their marriage. Did you know that out of the 4 couples you admire, only Rick and Gail remained close after the wife had an affair? It turns out that John began an affair in response to Wendell's infidelity. When Wendell discovered this, he stopped his intimate contact with her without difficulty. Colleen said, "I find it hard to believe. Joan always mentions how happy they are. She's only faking. They don't spend much time together and only appear to be joyful at public gatherings. They have separate bedrooms and rarely communicate, relying on texting and emails. Marge, who had a terrible marriage with Norm, learned about Joan's affair and decided to do the same. Despite this, their marriage has not improved. Nonetheless, Marge appears to be happier because they are still married. Marge often praised her marriage, probably because, like Joan, they wanted others to believe they were doing well for older and wealthier ladies like themselves. Colleen emphasized the importance of maintaining a positive image. Well, they are my buddies. They would be honest with me. David simply grinned back. Gail followed them, and Rick said that he initially tried to ignore the warning signs and act normally. However, he noticed that after a few months, she had visibly lost interest in their relationship. She was no longer satisfied with the humdrum closeness that she and her husband shared as a married couple. Instead, she engaged in exciting illegal encounters with a young man after lunch. It was tough for me to accept this information. It seems improbable that my girlfriends would deceive me so deeply about their marriage. Perhaps husbands exaggerate to cast their spouses in an unfavorable light. I thought, and I seriously doubt, that husbands. With the exception of Wendell, who does not require intimacy, they discovered an easy solution to their physical requirements. They recruited personal assistants. It took a while to recognize the truth of this statement. She was taken aback by what transpired. "Is she the new girl you hired?" she exclaimed. David appeared unconcerned by Colleen's reaction. In fact, he expected it. "I hired Alana shortly after you delivered that speech," he explained. "I explained the truth. Eileen needed support, and another position needed to be established. But in truth, I hired Alana for her business skills. She had a business education and came highly recommended. Her profession required us to spend a lot of time together, so we got to know one another really well. After a few months, I felt secure enough to tell her everything on my mind. It was a big comfort to finally express my thoughts and feelings at this time. I saw a shift in her demeanor, and it appeared that she was finally starting to comprehend me. Since then, we can talk any subject without concern. It was perhaps then that I realized your mood had changed, and it appeared that you were finally starting to comprehend me. We told each other practically everything and got extremely close. When did you begin dating?" "Just a few months ago. Unlike you, I do not get into bed with someone I met in a cafe." Colleen clearly reacted to the insult. David went on to clarify. "We've been preparing for this for a long time. We had a natural, laid-back relationship with plenty of flirtation and understatement. I was certain she liked me, judging by her conduct. Her soft touch of her hands when we were standing near together sparked something in me. I found myself pulled to her unexpectedly. We stayed late one evening to finish a job, and by the end of the night, I didn't want to go. Because she lived alone and didn't have a set location, we agreed to have a few beers and talk. We felt close while sitting side by side on my office's leather sofa. "Oh my God, David. You made fun of me on that couch," she mocked, and he merely smiled in return. "Okay, I understand what you are saying. I apologize." Thus began a new chapter. I figured that if you could do it, I could too. I usually chose a time when you are busy, and you intentionally worked late to do so. As I previously stated, you and I literally lived as neighbors. You made your decision. I made mine. It is not equivalent, David. My interactions with Ryan did not interfere with our time together. You cannot say the same thing. Of course, the circumstances were different. You were the first to abandon the marriage. I just reacted. I understand you tried to express concern by taking the initiative, and I acknowledge these efforts, despite my initial doubts. I did not feel required to give attention in return. Colleen struggled, unable to shake the mental image of her husband's intimacy with another woman. For the first time, she understood how her relationship with Ryan, regardless of their boundaries, could affect David. She assumed it would be easy to keep him out, but it wasn't. David waited several minutes before speaking again. "I need to tell you something else, Colleen," he explained. "What is it, exactly?" she managed to whisper. "Alana is around 2 months pregnant," he said. Colleen's eyes widened as she inhaled sharply. It appeared that everything was horrible, but it became worse. "If he's yours." "Alana informed me that this is correct and she will confirm it." Colleen was astounded by this discovery. "How did this occur?" she asked. David took a long breath before responding. "It was done purposely." Colleen staggered, surprised by the latest strike. She wasn't sure how much more she could endure, but she needed to know the truth. It was time to put everything on the table, no matter how difficult. "You... Did you get her pregnant? Was it intentional?" she asked. "But why?" "Colleen, I have a profitable firm, which we both possess. I don't have anyone else to give it to. I had intended to sell the company when the time came, but I didn't like the notion anymore. My employees are like family to me, and I do not want to put their future in the hands of a stranger or a giant organization. I'm thinking about leaving it to Alana or the child, depending on the time." "David, will you divorce me now? I do not intend to get divorced. I intend to retain the current arrangement. Alana genuinely wants to marry me, and she has even set out a prenuptial agreement in my favor. However, she is content that everything remains the same. The key point is that we can spend time together. As a result, nothing has changed for the time being. You can continue with Ryan or anybody you choose, and I will be with Alana. It was too much. Was she naive? Colleen was taken off guard by this change of events. She got her handbag and keys and stood up in surprise. "David, I need time to think about this," she stated gently. "I believe I'll go by car and possibly remain out late. I will text you so you do not worry." Colleen then left the house and drove aimlessly around the city. How may things spiral out of control? Her husband had a secret lover, a youthful and pretty woman with a dark complexion and lovely long, wavy brown hair. She suspected Alana was Hispanic, but wasn't certain. Throughout the journey, she sent David texts from time to time, and his responses were consistent. "Please stay safe." She was reassured to know that he still cared about her well-being. She finally returned home about 2 a.m. and walked inside the house, exhausted. David was sleeping, but the bedroom lamp had been turned on so she could see. She changed her clothes in the closet and emerged to find David awake and sitting. "Are you all right, Colleen?" David inquired worriedly. "Yes, it's okay. I am just tired. Let us rest and talk tomorrow," she replied, then went to bed. The next day went with little communication because they appeared to have nothing to talk about. David went to work, while Colleen spent time with her friends. She briefly considered canceling her arrangements with Ryan, but opted to retain them, much to her surprise. She felt grateful that they had spent time together. Ryan realized something was awry, so instead of physical closeness, they began a meaningful conversation. They made love gently and unhurriedly. In the weeks that followed, time appeared to pass unnoticed. David, who was now openly dating Alana, spent a lot of time in the office, but Colleen understood why. It still hurt her, and she became concerned that her health was failing. She began having stomach irritation, which was uncommon for Colleen, who had never had such problems previously. She came to believe that her marriage was affecting her health. Finally, she decided to visit a doctor. Colleen Lynch exited the elevator on the 7th floor of her husband's office building and went inside his office. Terry, the secretary, attempted to intercept her, knowing that her boss and Alana were inside alone and potentially in a compromising position. "Mrs. Lynch, please wait," Terry yelled out to her. Colleen halted, looked at Terry, whom she had always liked, and smiled encouragingly. "It's all right, Terry. I am already aware of the problem. Thank you for being so kind and caring." Terry stood aside, powerless to intervene as Colleen strolled down the corridor to her husband's office without knocking. She entered and noticed Alana seated on her husband's lap. The sound of the door opening caused them to turn their heads. Alana got up fast and dashed to the private bathroom. "Colleen, what is happening on? Why are you here?" David asked. "We need to speak, David," she responded when Alana reappeared. David asked, "Couldn't you have waited until late in the night?" "It could have," Colleen admitted. "However, because this also affects Alana, I decided to bring it up here." Everybody sat down. Colleen at one end, David is on the other. Alana sat on the armrest behind David. Colleen handed David a folder containing documents. "I'm filing for divorce," she added. His expression was unforgettable. Despite the gravity of the situation and the suffering she was experiencing, Colleen was almost amused by it. "Are you in a divorce?" "Me?" "Yes, David. I believe these conditions will be acceptable to you. I do not claim ownership of the company, but rather receive pay. I requested a little more in monetary terms." David examined the conditions in the document and saw nothing alarming. It was probably less than the court would have awarded her. As a result, reaching a settlement agreement proved impossible. David was only interested in one thing. Why now? "There are various reasons, the most important of which being my love for you. I need to explain something to you. I've loved you since we first met at Sheila Morgan's pool party when you were 17 years old. We've been together for almost 26 years, more than half our lives. I want nothing but for you to be happy. Unfortunately, I committed a terrible mistake that has irreversibly harmed our friendship. I'm letting you go so you can be happy with Alana and your new baby." Colleen stared at Alana, her face beaming with excitement at the possibility of marrying the man she adored. David was astounded by the news. "How about you, Colleen? Your donation will support me for the rest of my life. I'm starting a new chapter and I'm nervous. It's exciting. A lot of women live alone. Colleen, I am confident you will be all right. Actually, it is not what I am talking about. I won't stay alone for long. It looks like I'm pregnant." The folder of documents dropped to the floor with a loud thud, and David looked at his future ex-wife in bewilderment. They have never had children together. They preferred to spend time together and travel whenever they wanted. After several years of childlessness, their marriage came to an end. They were each beginning on a new journey, parenthood. Ryan was the child's father, or so David assumed. The baby was meant to be Ryan's, unless Colleen cheated on him. Despite the shock, Colleen remained calm and even joked about it. "What kind of lady do you think I am?" she said in a cheerful tone, grinning. "Well, I believe we already know the answer. Yes, it belonged to Ryan. Ryan has been and will always be lonely. And now we'll be together. Are you intending on keeping the baby? Thanks to your generosity, I will be able to care for the child while also hiring a full-time nanny whose expenditures you will indirectly fund. As you may have seen, I indicated my intention not to leave the house. It surprised me, but I do not want to dispute. I've always had a soft spot for this property, and I believe it'll be an excellent place to raise my child with the support of a babysitter. I guess you're correct, Colleen. I have to admit I did not expect this, but it makes sense. Have you shared this information with your friends?" "Yes. They understand that we had a serious chat about their dishonest and wise behavior. They expressed sorry that they had misled me. When I reassure them that I accept responsibility for my decisions, in the end, they revealed the truth. However, the fact that I am the only one pursuing a divorce indicates that I am taking the proper steps. If you ever need assistance, please do not hesitate to contact me. I think it's time for me to become a mother, and Ryan would make an excellent father." Colleen stood up. David and Alana reciprocated, and Colleen hugged them both. She then turned around and exited the same way she had entered. David was confident that Ryan would look after Colleen and her kid, but that didn't happen when Colleen informed Ryan that they were expecting a child. His reaction was explosive. Ryan began ranting at Colleen, calling her a foolish woman who he simply needed for fun. He no longer needed her now that she was divorced. Colleen panicked, unable to believe that this cruel, unpleasant, and rude man was the caring and attentive man with whom she had experienced the happiest times during the previous year. Colleen fell unwell and lost consciousness after waking up in the hospital. She was informed that she had lost her baby. Colleen's anguish was unbounded. She couldn't get over the unexpected revelation due of her own foolishness. She lost a wonderful husband as well as a kid she had been hesitant to have for so long. Thank you for listening to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, write a comment below with your thoughts on what transpired. Take care.